Do I have the floor? Sorry.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Just a short update. I'm an associate professor, not an assistant professor. And what I'd like to add publicly on the record for that is that I've been serving as a member of the board of directors of the Greek Natural Gas Transmission System Operator, which is called VESFA, in Greece since October 2019. And I've also been the leading negotiator of Greece for the negotiations leading to the establishment of the East Med Gas Forum, and part of them, and currently the representative, one of the representatives of the country in the executive board of that, on the high-level governing board of that organization until its transformation into an executive board. Looking back to 1 year or over a year of the developments that have taken place in and around Cyprus since we last talked in January 2021, I'd like to use the time that's been allotted to me to present a review and analysis of original developments and the relative significance over three primary sectors, thematic sectors. The first one are the developments on the negotiations of the Cyprus problem. The second is the emergence of new security issues within Cyprus that primarily deal with the expansion, the explosion of illegal migration and asylum seeking in Cyprus that is becoming an increasingly potentially volatile issue within the Republic of Cyprus and the territories under its direct control, that could also affect aspects of the Cyprus issue and its potential settlement, even though they are extremely minimal, as the current situation has it. The second category of analysis, of thematic analysis, is going to focus on what we call generally energy developments, including the prospect of the Republic of Cyprus's hydrocarbon program of exploration and potential exploitation, as well as issues that have to do with pipelines and cables, electricity cables, which are coming more and more into the fore in the front line of the discussion about the geopolitics of energy and the geoeconomics of energy in the Eastern Mediterranean. And finally, the third sector would have to do with issues that relate to the military developments in the region that are associated with the rearmament program of Greece and the way that these changes affect the balance of power in and around Cyprus with regards to these aspects, the security aspect, the external security aspect of the Cyprus question. With regard to the apologize for the interruption. I'm sorry, because I'm using my phone to connect with you. There was a call.
We can't hear you very well. Can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now better?
A little bit better. Something happened before, so we lost you.
No, I had an incoming call. That's why you couldn't
hear
me.
Okay.
I had to cancel it. I'm sorry. Yeah. So with regards to the first aspect that has to do with developments of the diplomatic aspects in terms of the resolution of the Cyprus question, we've had two primary, I would say, monumental changes in what has happened over 2021. The first one is the fact that the new leadership of the Turkish Cypriot community that was elected at the end of 2020 actually followed on its electoral program. And the electoral program on which Mr. Tatar won the elections against Mr. Akinci, with the help, including the financial help, of Turkey, according to Mr. Akinci's own accusations about illegal tampering, because the word illegal is several parentheses that you can use when you talk with for the
your sound is not coming through at all. I don't know what happened to your sound, and I don't know if it's just that.
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's better now.
All right. As I was saying, the first major development with regards to the situation in Cyprus and the Cyprus talks have to do with the fundamental change in the position of the Turkish Cypriot community. The nationalist and ultra-nationalist coalition that won with the financial assistance of Turkey the elections against Mr. Akinci in late 2020, won on a program, on a platform that demanded a two-state solution, which is not something that many people thought at the time, that this was just a negotiating ploy or a negotiating maneuvering on the part of Turkey with regards to a better positioning on when the talks are going to restart. This hasn't proven to be this case. When the talks did restart in Geneva in April 2021, for the first time in the history of the talks since 1977, the official position of the Turkish Cypriot community was a position that was completely outside the framework, the agreed negotiated framework that is being described in several decisions of the UN Security Council that has been taken since 1977, which is basically a negotiation that would lead to a two-state solution in Cyprus, something that is completely outside the framework of what we've been negotiating and discussing since 1977. What is interesting, of course, to note is that on the one side, even though none of the members, the permanent members of the Security Council, accepted, even actually most of them publicly condemned that position, the UN Secretary General, in his latest report on Cyprus, actually did not condemn the Turkish Cypriot side or Turkey for supporting such a position, which is indicative of the fact that even the process itself and the custodians of the process are having a very difficult time of trying to find out any form of common ground, not to resolve the problem, but to restart the negotiations on how to start talking about the problem. There is very little or no room for compromise here, or the restart of the negotiations. Anastasiadis, the President of the Republic of Cyprus, walked out of the talks essentially by saying that this is something that we cannot possibly discuss or analyze. Even the British diplomacy, which is very, very creative in trying to find and propose compromising solutions, did not propose its own compromising solutions. The talks ended on day one of their potential cooperations. Since then, the situation has not changed. There is some common ground with regards to who's going to be the next representative of the UN Secretary General on the Cyprus talks, but even his latest appointment doesn't change really anything, given the fact that the position of the Turkish Cypriot side is a non-starter for the Greek Cypriot side and for the international community. The second development in 2021, which was a very important one, had to do with the change of the status quo in Varosha. Varosha is the part of the old city of Amochostos, which was populated in 1974, and that was evacuated by the Greek Cypriot population as the Turkish troops ended the second phase of their military intervention or invasion in August 1974. Since then, that part of the city has been barbed wire, has been cut off from the rest of the island and remained under the direct control of the Turkish military even after 1983, when the Turkish military established, with the acceptance of Rauf Denktash and Turkish Cypriot political parties, what it perceives as the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, an independent state according to the perception of Turkey, a perception which is shared by no one else in the world other than Turkey, because Turkey is the only one that has recognized this illegal entity, which is a secessionist entity in everything, including name and substance with regards to the island of Cyprus. The big difference up to 2021, April 2021, was that the authorities that were elected to run this secessionist entity, the authorities of the Turkish Cypriot community that were elected in the occupied northern territories, had as a principle the willingness to discuss the reunification of the island and the reunification of the two parts of the island within a structured framework of negotiations that was accepted by the international community. After April 2021, this has changed. And this is something which also affected the situation on the ground, because as Erdogan had promised and as Tatar had promised, in the summer of 2021, they started to partially open the city of Varosha and return some parts of the area into to return some parts of the area to public use, including the return of properties to some Greek Cypriot citizens, 20 families actually in only one neighborhood, which basically is something that leaves is an attempt on the part of the Turkish authorities to resolve, in parentheses, resolve the Cyprus problem on the ground. This is a major development. It was, of course, seen as a major provocation on the part of the Greek Cypriots. In reality, the fact that you have a change on the ground of the post-1974 situation, a change on the ground, eliminates, unfortunately, even the possibility of some sort of a transactional approach to the resolution of parameters, of chapters, of elements of the Cyprus issue that could have happened on the ground, even without or outside the context of a general settlement. There have been the United Nations Security Council resolutions on specifically on Varosha since the 1985, since the 1980s, said that this city should be returned immediately and not as a precondition of negotiations to the rightful owner. Since then, of course, it's been a very long period of time. Of course, it hasn't happened. Turkey is not accustomed to make unilateral gestures of goodwill with regard to the Cyprus question or any other matter in this regard. But more importantly, what this signifies on the part of the Turkish Cypriot authorities and on the part, most importantly, of Turkey itself, is an unwillingness to even go into a transactional negotiation that could have, for example, returned Varosha to the Greek Cypriots in exchange for example, and this is something that has been talked about in Cyprus in the past 10 to 15 years, in exchange for the opening of the illegal airport in Timbu, which is in Nicosia, an occupied part of Nicosia, to international aviation, as well as to the facilitation of Turkish Cypriot direct trade with the European Union and international commerce generally through the city of Famagusta, through the port of Famagusta, that could be reopened and run by the United Nations, provided that the city of Varosha, the old city of Amohostos, would be returned to the Greek Cypriot side. That was a formula that was discussed in the past, that was discussed several times, and could have been the beginning of a transactional resolution of some parameters of the Cyprus question on the ground that could have created better conditions for both sides and could have diffused some of the tensions that have been building up for the last 15 years. The second thematic issue is another issue that many people haven't paid significant attention to. It has to do with the problem of illegal migration in Cyprus. Everybody is talking about the way that Turkey has used migrants as a strategic leverage against Greece and against the European Union. We've all witnessed and analyzed last year in the conference the effect of what was perceived in Greece as an asymmetric attack, an unconventional attack on the Greek-Turkish border in Evros in February, March 2020. What has been happening in Cyprus is very close to that, even though the attack, in parentheses, attack, is silent. It is silent, it's gradual, and it's building up to the point that about 10% of the population of the island, on the free territories of the island, which is only inhabited by approximately 875,000 registered people, about 10% of that population is currently an asylum seeker. And most of them have come, a significant amount, not all of them have come through the Turkish occupied territories along the Green Line or by boat from Turkey direct, but the majority of them, about 65% of that part of the population that is currently seeking asylum, has come through Syria, from Syria and from other parts of the Middle East to Cyprus. This is a huge number for such a small country, such a small economy to cope with. And this is increasing tensions within the population and within the territories under the control of the Republic of Cyprus. There are an increasing amount of episodes, of incidents that are becoming increasingly violent in several parts of Cyprus that are the result of conflict, of confrontation between different groups of illegal migrants or asylum seekers, because the infrastructure simply is not there to try to provide the necessary processing and living conditions. So after a short time of taking these people in and having them processed as asylum seeker, they are released to general population, and of course they have nowhere to go, and that increases significant tensions within the development of the country. This is increasingly becoming a national security issue internally, and a public security issue, excuse me, not national security, a public security and a public safety issue internally for the Greek Cypriot government and for the territories under the control of the Republic of Cyprus. The fact that Cyprus is not a member of Schengen complicates things significantly. There is no presence of Frontex in the area, and there is very little capacity or capability on the part of the Cypriot authorities and the Cypriot Coast Guard, because there is no navy in Cyprus, to be able to properly patrol or properly offer border protection for a border which is not recognized by the government itself. That's the big paradox in the case of Cyprus. With regards to energy developments, what has happened in 2021, which is quite positive, is that we've had the restart just a few weeks ago of the Cypriot exploratory program with ExxonMobil and Qatar Petroleum in Block 10 of the Cypriot EEZ, with Total and Eni coming up following in the first quarter of 2022, first and second quarter of 2022, with additional drillings in Block 6 and 7, as well as the expansion, expansion of the investment on the part of Exxon on the Cypriot EEZ to Block 5. There is a significant interest. Currently, there is a drilling that's taking place. If the field under appraisal, because it's an appraisal drilling, which means a second drilling, is confirming the initial estimate will confirm the initial estimate of the field, then it would be significantly a very important change, because if it is confirmed, it's going to double or even triple the confirmed estimates of Cypriot natural gas reserves, which means that would increase the viability of projects from the Eastern Mediterranean in terms of various export options. And the important development is that it has restarted. It has restarted in earnest, and despite Turkey's known position and known reaction to those facts, as you have seen, Turkey is not attempting to stop, or is not attempting to create difficulties for ExxonMobil and the other parts of the region, partly because the area where ExxonMobil is drilling is outside the areas that are directly claimed by Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Cypriot EEZ. The second major development, of course, since March 2021, is a discussion that has been taking place between different countries in the region about maximizing the export options of the region in a more synergetic way. This discussion is taking place bilaterally and multilaterally between Egypt, Cyprus, Greece, and Israel. There are new infrastructures that are being proposed, the upgrading of LNG capacities in in Egypt, new interconnecting pipelines between Israel and Egypt, as well as new infrastructure between Greece and Egypt as a pipeline connection, including, according to an MOU, the two governments signed in Cairo in November 2021. The third and last, and I would perceive to be even more interesting development, has to do with the promotion of electricity interconnectors. There are old projects, including most importantly Eurasia interconnecting cable that would connect the electricity, physically interconnect the electricity grids between Israel, Cyprus, and Crete. That has been boosted by the signing of an MOU between the three governments, including Israel, in March 2021 in Nicosia, and is in the process of asking for a significant financial grant on the part of the European Commission that would consolidate its ability to be constructed, I mean, from a financial point of view in a very solid way, since it already has the support, the financial support of the Greek regulators, because they, both the Cypriot and the Greek one, have decided to divide part of the cost of its construction to the internal market, to socialize the cost, as we would discuss, to socialize the cost as it is actually the proper term, through decisions of the two regulators, independent regulatory authorities of energy between Cyprus and Greece. So Eurasia already has a level of financial and capital commitment that EastMed gas pipeline never had and never dreamed to have, actually. And this is not the end, but it's the beginning of a process of increasing the financial solidity and the financial viability of the project, which is, of course, the epitome of environmental sustainability, given the fact that electricity is by itself of a strategic significance and a strategic enabler. These cables are strategic enablers of the energy transition throughout the region and are increasingly important for Greece as well. Apart from this line, there are also bilateral projects of bilateral interconnection between Greece and Egypt that was signed in an MOU in October, as well as between Cyprus and Egypt that was signed in October as well, 2021. And in November 2021, there was another signature for another trilateral project, the Euro-Africa interconnector, that is supposed, which is much more, in a much more beginning level of planning compared to Eurasia or the other two bilateral projects, which would connect Egypt, Cyprus to Crete, and thereafter to mainland Greece. Finally, and with that, I'd like to conclude, we have had significant developments on the military balance of power, not on Cyprus itself, even though the Cypriot government appears to have taken a significant decision to upgrade the existing, but not add, unfortunately, to upgrade the existing Exocet systems, the naval missiles that it has on Cyprus, to extend the range and the accuracy up to 200 nautical miles. There was a decision on the Cypriot defense budget that was passed recently to increase, to actually go through with the upgrading, the modernization of these pipeline systems, missile batteries. There's serious discussion finally for buying a serious mid-term, mid-range to long-range anti-ballistic and anti-missile and anti-airplane, anti-air force system. The most important developments, of course, with regards to the military balance of power in the region as a whole, is the vast modernization, the more than 10 billion euros rearmament program that the Greek government has initiated over the last 18 months, at the spearhead of which is the introduction of the Rafale F3R plane, including the Meteor missiles and the other sub-strategic missiles that it's going to be able to develop and deploy. The Rafale Rafale plane, which is a combined fighter jet and bombardment jet. It has both, it operates in both capacities from an operational point of view, has a range and an operational autonomy that goes far beyond any capability the Greek Air Force or the Turkish Air Force had up to that point in the Eastern Mediterranean. The Greek F-16s could have reached Cyprus and the areas over Cyprus, but would not have been able to remain for a very long time over the island. This changes dramatically with the Rafale. the Rafale do have that capability. So it has an indirect yet significant effect on the bilateral military balance of power once the Rafale are introduced into the Greek Air Force. The decision has been to introduce an entire squadron of 24 Rafale. By 2023, the 18 of them are going to arrive and be fully incorporated by 2023. This month, the first 6 are going to arrive in Tanagra. And by 2025, it's most likely that we're going to have a full squadron. This is a weapon that the Turkish Air Force cannot match, that the Turkish Air Force cannot acquire, and that the Turkish Air Force cannot most likely confront. This is a game changer for the military balance of power in and around Cyprus. And in addition to that, something which is more long-term, but it's already started to be developed, has to do with the naval rearmament program of Greece with regards to another 6 billion euros naval modernization program that includes the provision of at least 3, potentially 4 Belara frigates from the Groupe Naval, including most likely, this is still a project which is under discussion, the Wind heavy corvettes, which is essentially, just to give you an idea of how this is going to change the balance, the naval balance of power. Both the Belaras and the corvettes have what we call theater missile defense capabilities, which means that they can protect themselves from the Air Force, as at the same time have increased submarine warfare capabilities and are able to bring significant ship-to-ship, naval-to-air, as well as naval-to-land missile capabilities. The firing power of a single Wind, if we end up with the French solution, of course, is more powerful than 2 or 3 of the existing frigates of the Greek Navy as they are today. And on top of that, of course, they have theater missile capabilities, anti-air force capabilities and protection, which no ship, either in the Greek or the Turkish Navy actually have. Turkey is going to try to develop its own frigate that would have anti-missile, anti-air protection capabilities sometime after 2025, 2026. So there is a significant change both in the aerial, as well as the naval part of the military balance of power, and that is something which is quite significant because it will affect the situation in and around Cyprus over the next few years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you, Dr. Sakiris. On that note, Dr. Sklios, if you'd like to pick up off that, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Above all, Happy New Year. I wish the best, and above all, health to colleagues, families, and which I think it's another question. Okay, Professor Tsakiris, he did a very detailed, I should dare to say, analysis of the security situation in the area. So my role and my contribution is, my role first of all is, I suppose, let's say, easier. And I will try to present. I mean, my presentation will be around the opportunities and the challenges that the major stakeholders, the major key players in the region have to face. So probably that constellation of the various actors and how they conceive the new reality, hopefully it will be something useful for our audience. I will try to share a presentation. Hopefully, I will do it successfully. So is it something that you now can see?
I can view it.
Okay, so thank you very much. So it's a brief presentation. Okay. let me move a little. Okay, for some reason I have to move that here. Okay. So, well, first of all, the United States, as far as I understand, the United States have refocused their security doctrine view. We have, of course, a new administration, the new Biden administration, which has slightly changed the priorities, but still not drastically. Still, there is a different pace. Shale gas development contributed to the country's energy mix. Energy autarky supports any strategic redirection internally. I mean, we have also seen the recent moves of the United States trying to support the European allies on the latest energy crisis. Well, there is an issue there. I mean, internally the states, and probably our colleagues in the states, they are more familiar than we are, and this is related to democracy in the country. And there are people who put it under question. And of course, we have the very recent images in our TV screens. And of course, we have a very important development, which is actually the change in the initial US declaration on the declared support to the East Med project, which is, of course, the 6 billion gas pipeline project between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus, with the aim of Israel to access the European markets. The concept of the project was clearly political from the outset, given the ambiguity surrounding its source of gas supply, but also the enormous economic and technical challenges that accompanied the project, making it less attractive in market terms than other alternatives. So we have also some recent views, as they have been stated by the ambassador, the US ambassador to Greece. We very much hope that this dialogue, including MedGas Forum, where the United States has sought observer status, will keep the door open as well to Turkey. So there is, we see a change of policy in a very important project, and this is something we have to see how it will probably go forward and how it will affect that constellation of the power game in the region. Russia, 30 years after the end of the Cold War, Russia tried to regain its power. A new doctrine under Putin's leadership in Russia to have internationally recognized sphere of interest, which will include the former Soviet Union and much of Eastern Europe. New areas of conflict which raise challenges for Russia and US NATO. Ukraine, Kazakhstan are the latest one. We see every day again the very crucial and significant developments in the region. Continuous interest and presence in the Eastern Mediterranean, so Syria, Libya, the Cypriot question, while Russia still remains the main exporter for the European Union. And here I have the latest 2020 imports of natural gas. So we see that only 2019, European Union had to import 41.3% of its natural gas from Russia. So still there is a great dependency. Still, of course, we have the various declarations from the side of the European Union, but dependency is still here. The European Union has not managed to find its way on the international stage in matters of common foreign policy and security policy, of course. Still based on the US absence from Eastern Med region, it falls upon the EU to prevent any Eastern Mediterranean crisis, although we have to see how the new Biden doctrine will probably change and how much it will affect the US presence in the region. We have the end of the Angela Merkel era and the end of leaders in the European continent. Bilateral agreements, of course, we must not forget the French elections, which are still coming. Bilateral agreements replace or incite any efforts from the European Union to present a common foreign policy. Main powers in Europe, Germany and France, seem to have their own national agenda to promote their own interest in the Eastern Mediterranean region. While energy security for the European Union still is under question, we have seen from the statistics that the European Union relies on Russia for natural gas, which is contradictory when compared with European economic diplomacy putting sanctions against Russia. Eventually, I think that we can easily say that the case of the European Union is still a case in formation, since the European Union common foreign security policy is something to be seen. National interests prevail, and thus national policies, as they are defined by national interest, is the main characteristic of the European Union member state in terms of their stance towards security issues in Southeastern Mediterranean. My very good colleague Theodoros said a lot about the stance of Turkey. Turkey's strategic orientation has been drastically changed lately. Neo-Ottomanism and the recovery of hegemony in the wider region seems well established in the country's political and military establishment. Although we can probably say that the Erdogan's era seemed to reach an end, especially because of the various and I would say significant economic issues that Turkey is currently facing. Domestic problems continue to challenge the political life, so we have to see how it will affect actually Erdogan's hegemony in the political scheme. Turkey imported around 72% of its energy needs in 2018, while energy constituted around 17% of total imports in 2020. Standing between the US and Russia, it is critical to decide a more independent policy in the region, while EU and Turkey relations to remain stagnant and mostly related to the migration crisis. Again, my very good colleague Theodoros gave some good insights on the migration issues and the challenges that actually the Republic is facing nowadays. Well, Greece, more active diplomacy during last years, efforts to build strategic alliances and improve security level of the country, new armament programs already under progress, economy under recovery, although we have to see how COVID will still affect the national economy, high solar potential and areas with high wind potential, untapped hydrodynamics and potential of geothermal and biomass and biogas, still, of course, availability of lignite, or however, contrary to national effort for green economy, and this is an internal issue again for Greece to resolve. In relation to Cyprus, in December 2021, the Cypriot government and the joint venture ExxonMobil and Qatar Energy signed the contract for exploration and proportional allocation of production and the hydrocarbon exploration license for Block 5 in the Cyprus EZ. US decision in 2020 to provide education and training to the Cyprus nation's armed forces can act as a threshold, well, if combined with the expected implementation of the recently approved East Med Act in the United States. And of course, we have to see how the new presidential elections, the coming presidential elections in 2023 will set a political scene in the country and how it will probably affect the security issues in the area. Well, Israel, we have a new government, coalition government, which means that probably decisions are not so easy to be taken. In 2017, gas consumption in Israel had an increase of approximately 37% in less than 3 years. The Tamar reservoir was the main source of natural gas in Israel, and the development of the Leviathan reservoir to provide redundancy and security to the natural gas system. Egypt, well, with President Sisi leading the country since 2014, it seems to have excellent relations with Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. Only today or yesterday, I think President Sisi reaffirmed his commitment to the Egypt-Greek relations rather than being attracted by Turkey as he publicly declared. Stagnant relations were with Turkey. The Zohr field is seen as the largest ever gas discovery in Egypt and the Mediterranean. And in August 2019, production from the field reached more than 2.7 billion cubic feet of gas per day. which is around 5 months ahead of the development plan. And we have, of course, a series of new strategic alliances. The 3+1 cooperation agreement between Cyprus, Greece, Israel, and the United States. The Charter of Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum, Cyprus, Egypt, Greece, Israel, Italy, Jordan, and Palestine. Greece, United Arab Emirates Defense Agreement, the Greece-Israeli Defense Deal, Greece-France with the armament programs, Russia, Turkey, Turkey-Libya, Turkey-Spain armament programs, and Turkey-Germany, again, armament programs. So I think that this is a constellation of the various stakeholders, the key actors in the region, with the basic points of the basic security issues and points that each one of these actors is facing, and always in relation to the energy dimension. So, well, this is my contribution for tonight, and of course I will be open to questions from the audience. Thank you very much.
A very informed conversation indeed by both our presenters. First, we received a nice presentation as far as the different challenges in the region, and then the different actors and the roles that the different actors play in the region. I do want to go back a little bit. Both of you referred to the East Med, and the big controversy or the big issue. Not necessarily a controversy. It just seems like there's a dousing of of expectations as far as the East Med pipeline is concerned, and the possibility of feasibility of it. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, give us your perspective, and how does that fit into the whole energy conundrum in the region overall.
Theodoros, you can have the start if you like.
No, it's a go ahead. I started. So why don't you start this time? I don't want to monopolize the discussion.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would say that let's say that there is a disappointment, and that's an issue that we have any way to face. And I suppose that how it will affect the actual policies in the region, this is something to be seen. I suppose that there are also a series of negotiations currently taking place in order to assume how and to what extent the project will be reformed or will be redirected. In any case, this is something to be seen. This is a very recent development, but nevertheless, this has been a quite disappointment in the region and the partners involved.
Well, I just want to say the following. I'd agree with the comment of my colleague that the actual impact of those statements, or actually non-papers, remains to be seen. It remains to be seen not on public perceptions, because it was actually the reasoning of the decision of the United States to withdraw its support.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be annoying again, but I can't hear you at all. So I don't know if everybody else having the same issues.
Can you hear me now? I don't know.
Just a slightly better, but I don't know what happened to your volume overall. Is everybody else having the same issues?
Oops, one moment.
I can hear him, but it gets a bit faint sometimes.
Okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I'm yelling at my own microphone, so it should have some positive impact. So what I was saying is that I would agree with what Professor Sklia said before, that the actual impact of these non-paper, not on public perception, because in this regard it has been actually very negative, but on the actual decision-making of the companies is yet to be seen. The feasibility study of the project has not been completed yet. Of course, a public statement on the part of the US government that it no longer supports the project for whatever reason is not something that any project would have liked to hear, of course, in the region, especially such a complex and challenging project from a financial point of view and from an economic point of view. So the actual impact of that remains to be seen. And of course, it has to be compared with issues and options regarding alternative scenario with regards to how either a pipeline or a combination of pipeline and LNG could be an option to export the excess export capacity of the region, which is quite significant and which is likely to increase the net export capacity of the region following hopefully the successful drilling of Exxon and Total in the southwestern blocks of the Cypriot EEZ, as well as additional exploration efforts that are going to take place by Energean in the Israeli exclusive economic zone within the second half of 2022. So this is additional drilling, additional exploration which is taking place both in Cyprus and in Israel. I personally believe that you can do both LNG and pipeline or pipelines, and the issue of stranded assets, which is used by some to argue that neither should be completed, it does not make sense, because basically, and I can tell you that as a matter of experience from my own experience here in Greece, in the Greek natural gas transmission system operator, is that actually most of the infrastructure, the new infrastructure that we're currently building in Greece, and several other companies are building throughout Europe in terms of pipelines, are built with hydrogen in mind, which means that they can be hydrogen ready from day one. The cost of producing green hydrogen in Egypt is projected to be one of the lowest and most competitive in the world, primarily from solar. So we can picture very, very easily pipelines starting with a mixture of green hydrogen and gas, and thereby over a process of 10 to 15 years, seeing a change of the content of what is actually transported through those pipelines to something that would be close to or even completely hydrogen. So this is not an either or solution. Pipelines actually are more economic if are turned into a mixture of methane gas and hydrogen that would eventually, after 10 or 15 years, or even quicker, depending on availability of hydrogen, be transformed and used as a hydrogen infrastructure, even though they started as a gas infrastructure, than any other form of liquefying hydrogen, turning it into ammonia and exporting it in that form. So in this regard, actually pipelines for short distances like the ones between Egypt and Greece are far more economically viable. So that could be a way out, not of greenwashing, as some τι να πω τώρα, να τους χαρακτηρίσω, as some environmental extremists would perceive or criticize this idea, but this is a very viable economic way of making sure that the infrastructure, even though it starts with gas, is going to be left with hydrogen. How quickly this transformation can happen is a matter of availability of hydrogen and green hydrogen. But Egypt has this major, and Israel to a certain extent, but particularly Egypt, has this major advantage because of the vast of solar capacity that it has in the region that could actually be utilized in this regard. The other thing I'd like to mention, of course, what I've said earlier, that there is a shift in the focus to electricity interconnectors. Electricity interconnectors are the future, and they're also securitized and will be securitized in the region and throughout the region. But they are the future in the sense that they are necessary, even if they don't carry only green electricity, but are necessary to allow for the balancing of the electricity systems and the additional adequacy and security of the electricity systems as they are becoming more and more dependent on stochastic, intermittent, that means intermittent green power, so as to be able to provide an opening to the further penetration, a secure opening and a gradual opening to the further penetration of renewable electricity, zero emission electricity into a national electricity transmission grid. Without interconnections, without the ability that is to import and exchange electricity in a moment's notice, it is impossible, given the current immaturity of energy storage technologies, to be able to establish, to create a secure electricity system that is not going to collapse the first moment, the first day, the first hours, that you're going to have a Dunkelflut event, which is a German term that describes a period of time with no wind and no solar, which means a collapse of the ability of renewable electricity to provide the backload system into the electricity grid. This phenomenon and this danger, which is recurring because of climatic conditions that are changing throughout Europe, can only be met through, among other means, but can only be met either through having a backup load of thermal electricity, which means to have natural gas or nuclear stations as a basic load part of the unit. So when you have a loss of supply from renewables, to back them up within a matter of seconds to keep the system, the electricity system running, or by having the ability to import electricity so as to balance the system and be able to provide the necessary adequacy of the system, of the electricity system. This is impossible without interconnectors. The big additional benefit of non-EU interconnectors is going to be that Egypt and Israel, especially Egypt and Israel, but especially Egypt, are going to have very, very different climatic conditions, which means very, very different basic load conditions than any other country with which Greece is already interconnected. In case of an electricity emergency, you need to be able to import electricity. The problem is that the conditions, the climatic conditions which affect these situations are going most likely to be similar to the countries with which you are already interconnected in Europe, because they have the same climate conditions. Egypt doesn't. So it will be potentially able to provide you with the necessary electricity flows to be able to stabilize the system. So it's not only an issue of being viable economically or viable environmentally, it's becoming an increasingly crucial component of providing security and stability to the electricity grid. And that happens during a time where the viability, adequacy, and security of the electricity system is becoming, throughout Europe and internationally, a national security priority because of the crucial significance of the electricity grid for the energy transition. So in this regard, it is potentially important that the US administration has shifted, provided, of course, that they actually put their money where their mouth is, that there is a tangible support on behalf of the US government for the Eurasia interconnector in terms of its financial viability and capacity, especially with regards to the link between Israel and Cyprus. And of course, that we see a significant consolidation of the American position in practical terms in favor of that specific project, as well as, of course, bilateral interconnectors between Egypt and Greece, as well as between Egypt and Cyprus. So out of this gloom and doom that has been perceived from the public opinion level, and not only, but particularly in the public opinion level, as a result of the circulation of this American non-paper, there are arrays of hope for the other part, the electricity component of what was inside this non-paper, provided the governments are able to use it properly, and provided that this is substantial and this is consistent.
Great. As you know, it seems that energy and the issue of energy, we're sort of like I don't know what the term to use, but we know so little, and the dimensions of it is so complex. And just listening to both of you describe even the answer to my question, our understanding of it is so rudimentary, and it's so complex, and it's moving so fast that it's really changing even the way that we're calibrating issues of security. And my comment more than anything else is, to whether this could be sort of like the driver that gets us out of the wicked challenges of the past, like some of the things that we have seen in the past. But I think that there are questions out there, and I think Jake has a question, so I'm going to yield the floor.
Yeah, so during the presentation, Dr. Sekiris, you mentioned that Greece is acquiring these multi-role aircraft and these frigates from Europe, I believe you said, and
From France.
from France, yeah. And that this is going to sort of tilt the balance of power in the region, at least militarily, towards Greece. So how might this impact Turkish behavior in the region around the issue of Cyprus maybe specifically, and what might Turkey's move be in response to this sort of imbalance of power? I know you mentioned that they're developing their own sort of technologies, but that's years in the future.
Turkey currently has a significant advantage, or not over the air force, but over the naval balance of power. This is going to be tilted in favor of Greece by 2025, 2026. In the interim, provided, of course, unless there is a direct delivery of corvettes or an upgrading of corvettes and submarines before 2020, within 2022 to 2024. The behavior of Turkey is clear with regards to its position. I don't know if you're insinuating in your question whether it's going to become more aggressive or use this window of opportunity to be able to make something more aggressive in the region. Is this what you are asking, essentially? No?
Well, I don't want to make an implication because I'm kind of unsure, but I figured there would be a change in behavior if they had perceived that they were not as advanced as another player.
Well, they have perceived that very well. If you look at because what's happening on the Greek side of the Air Force part is also compounded by the existence of the American embargo on SSB since December 14, 2020. So it's not just that the Greek Air Force is making quantitative leaps forward until 2023, which is going to be further multiplied by the upgrade of 87 Greek F-16s to the Viper edition, to Block 70 and Block 72 Plus, which has already started and will take place over the next few years, is that Turkey cannot even get spare parts for its much more obsolete fleet of F-16s, because Turkey only has Block 20, Block 30, and Block 50 or 52 plus. Doesn't have anything above that. That's why Erdogan asked to buy 80 Vipers and upgrade another 40 to the Viper edition, so as to at least counter this. So Turkey already knows that. This change in the balance of power, as long as Greece is consistent, and that will remain to be seen, but it appears that is going to be consistent with this regard, is creating already a deterrent effect in and of itself with regards to Turkish behavior, which is also further, how could I say, multiplied by the very, very, very serious economic crisis that the country is going through. So instead of making Turkey more aggressive, which is an opinion that many people share, or an analysis that many people share in Greece or Cyprus, is that I believe that they would actually make it less aggressive, more introverted, and less willing to take a significant risk, provided that this change takes place very soon and very quickly. So Turkey is going to reply by trying to further internalize the cost of developing the systems. But even though you can be very easily impressed by announcements on Turkey that's going to build its own ships, its own submarines, its own fighter jets, etc., etc., the reality of the fact is that when it comes to the most important components in the Turkish arsenal, it is highly dependent on American export licenses, and American technology, which is currently blocked as a result of the CAATSA sanctions that were imposed on the Turkish industry by the outgoing Trump administration in December 2020. So this is changing the balance of power, but it is changing it hopefully in a way that is going to stabilize the situation and deter Turkey from taking additional provocations. Nobody can say that for sure, but a combination of the internal political crisis, of the economic crisis, and the deterrent effect of the rearmament should have a deterrent effect rather than a destabilizing effect. Turkey is going to lobby the hell out of its all efforts to try to undermine the embargo and stop the embargo, because it's an embargo essentially. The sanctions have turned in effect into an embargo. There are elements in the American government that will help Turkey to achieve that they will support Turkey in that effort for their own perception of Turkey as an invaluable country for the American strategy that is supposed to be containing Russian influence in the region, or potentially containing Russian influence in the region. I don't believe that the Senate or the House are going to fully share, or will fully share, or do fully share, or even share that kind of analysis. I think that there is a significant dichotomy within the American government on the executive branch and the legislative branch on how to deal with Turkey and how to deal with Erdogan. And I think that 2022 and 2023 is going to be very crucial years in this regard, because a lot of things may change in the region and in the American calculus in case Erdogan loses the election in 2023, and we have a transition of power away from Erdoganism and AKP after 20 years. This is a rosy scenario, of course, because I increasingly believe that this transition, if it happens, is not going to be a peaceful transition. And it's not going to be an immediate transition. It may take stages, it may take time. So these are factors of instability, of structural instability, that Erdogan would like to consider before taking another destabilizing step in the Eastern Mediterranean, understanding, at least his generals understand, that the situation is becoming more and more complicated and should become more and more deterrent with regards to Turkish behavior. That should become does not necessarily mean that it will become, okay? Because people, and Erdogan has shown himself to be cut out from reality in several ways. Otherwise, he would have never made the strategic error of buying the S-400 from Russia or threatening the United States to buy another one, knowing fully well what would that mean, what would that entail for his own industry, his own military preparedness and his own military capacity. Unless, of course, he has believed his own myth of invincibility, which is a very, very good starting point for strategic analysis of your opponent.
Let me only very, very briefly add that, okay, I agree with Professor Tsakiris. I only have one comment, and this comment is that Erdogan will not omit the various neighboring regional alliances that he is trying to establish and enhance. So this is one issue. And the second issue is that I don't believe that his, let's say, approach towards the Cypriot exclusive economic zone will very much change unless Greece clearly defines where is the red line.
So you're saying that Greece will have to take a more active role in defining the red line? Is that?
No, I say that unless Greece does not define the red line, then this means that there is always space for various forms of behaviors.
You mean in Cyprus or in Greece?
Cyprus, for Greece is clear.
From Cyprus. So you're saying that there's a lack of coordination in some way?
No, I don't say this. What I'm saying is the following, that although I agree with Theodoros, I still believe that the issue of Turkey's behavior towards the Cypriot exclusive economic zone will very much depend on the red line that Greece is going to put in this issue.
I mean,
Well,
is it such a prospect? I mean, is that it just appears from the outside that is not even that's something that Greece has not done or not willing to do, or a little bit of both?
Well, actually, it's a matter of deterrence, but on the other hand, it's also a matter of clear-cut positions. So we have to see.
Yeah. Well, if I may, can I comment on that? Because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
an interesting point of view. Yeah, I think the only Greek red line that exists in Cyprus is on land in case there's another an advancement of the Turkish military on land in Cyprus. That is a casus belli since 1985, according to a statement by Andreas Papandreou. Greece has never taken a position on the. I'm not commenting whether it should take a position on a red line in the Cypriot EZ. Just to clarify my position vis-a-vis what Professor Sklia said, but I'm saying that they've never even entertained the possibility of taking a position in this regard. The only red lines that exist, nevertheless, the red lines do exist in the Cypriot EZ. But these red lines have been put by Total and have been put by Exxon. No one else. And that means that Turkey is not going to touch the drilling operations of either Total or Exxon, partly because the French Navy has been here every time there's been a drilling on the part of Total as a deterrent, which it did in January 2018 on the one hand. And on the other hand, there has been a case where basically Exxon is so significant in and of itself and so important as a part of American diplomacy generally, that Turkey is highly unlikely to provoke the possibility of having a showdown or trying to stop or inhibit a drilling on the part of an American company. More importantly, even if that company is the most powerful private oil company in the world, not just the United States. So these are the red lines that actually exist right now. I don't, whether they are sufficient or not, is a different line, but Turkey has respected so far these red lines have been put on the part of the French government in favor of Total and on the part of the American company, not directly maybe the American government. This remains to be seen, to be clarified. But it's an interesting point that Professor Sklias is making in this regard.
Are there any questions? I think the other thing that's you know that constantly comes to mind as far as the way that we're looking at the region, it just seems that we can't overcome this the wicked challenges kind of a thing, is that we can't overcome the overwhelming presence of Turkey, and we don't necessarily see outside of, and Professor Sklias did a very nice job like presenting all the actors, but all the actors then become sort of like secondary or tertiary, because the issues become sort of like Turkey related, and the dyad between Greece and Turkey seems to be overcoming that. And I mean, the challenge for me is, the challenge for all of us in this panel is, could some of these challenges be overcome with other ways other than, we are sort of like set in this, deterrence approach. And I think, Jake's comment earlier as far as, Turkey's response to that short window that exists between, there is a shift in balance of power in some way, and everybody's sort of like nervously looking at 2022 as a possible window. Are there prospects, in your estimation, as we, finishing up this panel, are there prospects to bypass that and to have other ways? Is energy, are some of the other actors coming into the region giving us a way out of these challenges rather than becoming and staying as perennial challenges that get us sort of like stuck in this region?
What other actors are you referring to, if you can
Excuse
clarify?
me?
You said that other actors are coming into the region. Which
Well,
are
the
these
actors
actors?
that were outlined, that you do have actors that are regional and you have exogenous actors as well. So you do have like, shifting that's taking place, whether like they're regional players and regional actors like Turkey or Egypt or Israel. And then you do have exogenous actors such as China in the present, or even like, other actors coming in and changing the dynamic of the region overall. It just seems that they're just the overwhelming sort of like relationship structure of Greece and Turkey does not necessarily allow us to find any other ways or the prospects of other ways moving forward.
I don't believe that in the in the short term or even in the medium term there will be any major shift in what we see. I mean, considering that the United States are overwhelmingly dealing with Russia and Russian, let's say, stance towards the ex-Soviet Union republics, of course, including Ukraine. So I don't believe that seriously we can expect that the states will have a complete or significant change of paradigm from what we have seen until now, at least. Well, China, well, I don't think they will continue with the main economic diplomacy that they are following. So I don't consider as being a changing factor. The only thing that I could see again in the short and medium term is actually how the bilateral and trilateral relationships will finally be balanced in such, will be formulated, will take a final form, I would say, and then we will be able to see how this form of alliances will probably change the power shift paradigm. So I would first see, I mean, in the coming years, probably 1 to 3 years, I would first see the way the existing or newly formulated alliances will actually be put on the map. And then I would see what other actors could be involved, as long as we have a power map that it is somehow formed.
Okay.
Well, as far as Erdogan and his own strategic outlook remains in power and in a dominant position in Turkey, I see this possibility being close to impossible. If there is a change in government, depending who will succeed, there could be an open window for some readjustments, but not a general settlement. And that is a much more difficult approach that we would have to have another hour or so of a deep discussion, including domestic politics in Turkey, to try to analyze it. This if for example, CHP and a combination of the Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi and the İYİ Partisi, combination of either the mayor of Istanbul or the mayor of Ankara come to power and replace Erdogan, even if that happens, and even if that happens peacefully, which is a very two big ifs that we need to consider, the ideology of these two parties is such that they may rebalance their approach with regards to the strategic alliance that Erdogan has been building with the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and throughout the Middle East, thereby bringing him into direct confrontation with countries such as Israel, the UAE, and Egypt, on the one hand. But it's unlikely that it's going to change anything with regards to its approach vis-a-vis Cyprus or Greece. So it's not clear how this is going to work. Having said that, a position that a potential way out, not to resolve the problem, but to keep a lid on it, would be something that the Cyprus government has proposed systematically over the last 3 years, that there is some sort of an agreement with Turkey and the so-called TRNC with regard to stopping further provocations on the part of Turkey, okay, in exchange for some sort of participation or share or profit sharing mechanism that would give part of the future revenues of the Republic of Cyprus to the TRNC via a neutral mechanism, even before the solution of the Cyprus question. Of course, having said that, that's why I told you before in my initial presentation about Varosha. This would be something that would operate within a transactional approach to the de facto resolution of the Cyprus of aspects of the Cyprus problem on the ground without a comprehensive settlement. This transactional approach, which would entail such a deal, such an agreement, such an understanding, collapses the moment that Turkey takes the next step in Varosha and opens up another area of Russia to recolonization, as it is perceived by many Greek Cypriots. So it's very difficult, unfortunately, to find some sort of an opportunity to try to figure this thing out and try to at least be able to come to a not to a settlement, but come to a better to try to find a mechanism to reduce tensions or keeping tensions up to a manageable position.
All right, so perhaps on that note, we could wrap up.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Sklios and Dr. Sakiris. We're very grateful for this interesting and insightful presentation. I'd also like to thank the audience for being here. And before ending today, I wanted to remind everyone that at 2 p.m. today, we are having a presentation on sustainability. So just meet back in the same place. And thank you to the speakers again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.